Hey guys, tonight we're heading back, way back, to the crowded, clanging, cabbage-scented streets of ancient Rome. But we're not walking in the sandals of emperors, senators, or even merchants. No, tonight, you are a Roman servus publicus, a public slave. That means you technically belong to the state, not a private master. And your daily schedule has been written down by someone who has never in their life carried a bucket of pigeon droppings uphill. The sun hasn't risen yet, but your day already has. You're curled up on a straw mat in a cramped backroom somewhere in the Subura, Rome's notoriously noisy, notoriously smelly, and somehow still expensive neighborhood. The first scent to hit your nose isn't breakfast, it's wet limestone, leftover lentils, and the faint metallic tang of iron chains stacked neatly by the door. Not that you wear them. Those are for occasions. You roll upright, careful not to jostle your bunkmate, a man whose snoring pattern is more consistent than the state census. Your shift starts before the city rooster. Yes, there's a designated city rooster. Sounds off. You splash your face with water from a cracked clay basin that's seen better centuries. It's cold. Not refreshing cold, tooth-hurting, bone-pinching cold. Outside, the city isn't quiet. Rome never sleeps. Not really, but it's as close as it gets. The bakery ovens are just warming up, and carts loaded with amphorae creak like tired knees. You hear the distant shout of a fishmonger rehearsing his prices. From your windowless room, you can't see the forum, but you know it's there, waiting. You're expected at the officium censoris, the records office that oversees public slaves. Your job today is whatever a bureaucrat with a wine hangover and a blunt stylus says it is. You're not bitter. You're just, well, okay, maybe a little bitter. You head out, tunic hitched high to avoid last night's rain puddles, dodging an early cart full of cabbages so aggressively aromatic they could count as a weapon. The Subura is coming alive. Bakers curse at their apprentices. Street dogs chase cats with diplomatic immunity, and somewhere, a toddler is already crying about olives. At the office, a man with scroll ink on his teeth reads off names. Yours is somewhere in the middle, mispronounced as always. You respond with the appropriate grunt. He doesn't look up. You're handed a wax tablet that simply says, forum sweep, latrine check, marble polishing, midday, post office duty, dusk lamp lighting. You nod, because what else can you do? One day you might get promoted to supervising the other public slaves, or maybe reassigned to something cushy like scroll organizing at a library. Then again, last week, Lucius was promoted to firewood detail in the crematorium. You're issued your tools, a short broom, a sponge on a stick, a pot of cheap oil, and a rag that smells like it retired from toga service 3 emperors ago. You tuck the sponge into your belt like it's a ceremonial dagger. The irony isn't lost on you. Before you leave, you get your ration, a hunk of yesterday's bread, an amphora lid's worth of olive oil, and a look from the overseer that says, "Try not to embarrass the Republic." You dip the bread in oil. It's chewy, slightly sour, and gritty with whatever the grain miller swept off the floor. It's not terrible. It's also not food, if you ask a senator. You pass a scribble on the wall near the office, "Death to the pigeon menace." Someone has been waging graffiti war against the birds of Rome for weeks. You nod solemnly. You're on their side. As you make your way toward the forum, you dodge a donkey that looks like it's considering quitting the transport business altogether. The marble buildings are catching the first rays of sunlight, glowing like they think they're better than you, which, to be fair, they are. The Senate has more statues than you have sandals. You pass a woman sweeping her own doorstep, rare sight. She eyes you sympathetically, then more skeptically when she sees your sponge stick. People always assume you're with the latrine crew, and today they're not wrong. But before we get there, before the pigeon dung, the toga folding, the civic complaints, you stop, just for a moment on the temple steps. You breathe in, Rome smells like roasting barley, incense, and damp wool. It's not a bad life, it's not a good one either, but it's yours. You shuffle up the marble steps to the Officium Censoris, your sponge stick gently clacking against your leg like a sad little drumbeat of civic duty. The office, tucked beside the Forum but far less glamorous than its neighbors, is where Rome keeps its most sacred of civic records, taxes, citizen rolls, and more relevant to you, exactly who owes what number of hours doing exactly which tasks that no one else wants. The man who meets you inside is known as Scribonius. He is not a scribe. He is a registrar. This distinction matters a great deal to him, and almost no one else. Scribonius wears a short tunic of stained linen, sandals with mismatched straps, and an expression permanently carved somewhere between suspicious and smug. He greets you with a sniff. "Number 43, he asks, without looking up. "That's you." You nod. He reaches into the great tabula lignaria, a giant wooden board hung with pegs and tokens, and pulls your marker, a small brass disc with your number etched crookedly on it. This board is, somehow, both a scheduling system and a subtle threat. Lose your token and you could be reassigned to Rat Patrol under the baths. Today, Scribonius makes a mark on a wax tablet and hands you a fresh slate. It bears 3 scrawled words: Statuae, Forum, Latrina. Statues, Forum, Latrines. You sigh. You were hoping for the library again. But yesterday you polished a statue so thoroughly that it now reflects sunlight directly into the tribune's eyes during speeches, hence reassignment. You head toward the statue yard, a sun-drenched stretch of colonnade where dozens of marble figures stand in various states of grandeur and bird-induced indignity. Some of them, like Augustus, appear to be giving a speech. Others, like Bacchus, appear to be somewhere between drunk and slightly offended. All of them, however, are filthy. You begin with a statue of Minerva, goddess of wisdom, who today wears a rather lopsided pigeon nest like a battle helmet. You climb the small ladder, mutter a sleepy apology to the deity, and begin brushing. The bristles catch on bits of old wax, olive pits, and a mysterious yellow smear that definitely wasn't there yesterday. The work is slow, rhythmic, and oddly meditative. You remember your supervisor once described this part of the job as restful but publicly visible, which feels about right. Passers-by toss glances your way. One man whispers to his friend, "Imagine having to clean Minerva's backside," then cackles like it's the funniest thing said since Cicero was alive. It's nearly midday before you make your way across the Forum, broom tucked under your arm like a reluctant spear. This is the heart of Rome, but it's not the grand echo chamber of your imagination. It's noisy, it's chaotic, and it smells like fermented fish sauce, spilled ink, and civic ambition. Your job here is to sweep the stones. Not all of them, of course, just the main paths. You've learned that main paths roughly translates to anywhere a magistrate might walk, point, and complain. Today, that seems to include a stretch directly in front of the Senate steps, where a gaggle of senators in varied shades of wrinkled white fabric are arguing over a bill about aqueduct maintenance. You sweep around their sandals, expensive, perfumed, and never dusty because of people like you. One senator gestures mid-debate and spills a small amphora of figs. You step in silently and gather them, placing them back without a word. He nods at you. A slight nod, but still acknowledgement. That's rare. As you sweep, a child darts past, nearly knocking your broom loose. He's followed by a man in a laurel wreath shouting, "He stole my stylus, welcome to the Forum." Then comes the latrines. Rome's public toilets are communal affairs. A stone bench with evenly spaced holes and a drainage trench. There's a polite fiction that they are hygienic. You, however, are on the truth end of the sponge stick. The latrine check is not glamorous, but it is routine. First, You verify the presence of the communal sponges on sticks, tools shared, cleaned, allegedly, and reused. Some are missing. You take mental note. One of them has been left in the water trough upside down, which is bad form and worse sanitation. You check the level of the vinegar jar, used for sponge rinsing, and the oil lamps in the corners. There's graffiti on the wall, a rude limerick about Emperor Tiberius, and a surprisingly well-drawn gladiator. You smirk. Public slaves develop an appreciation for toilet poetry. It's our only literature. A rat watches you from the corner. You watch it back. Mutual respect. Your final duty here is to re-oil the door hinges. Not because they're squeaky, but because once a patrician caught his toga in a swinging door and wrote a letter, a very long letter. The door groans. You nod, satisfied. As you make your way out of the latrine block, your stomach growls. It's nearly time for the midday break. If you're lucky, someone will have figs to share. If not, there's always that slightly less crusty corner of the bread from this morning. But first, back to the registry to check in your tablet. Scribonius doesn't look up when you hand it over. He scribbles something, probably misspells your name again, and waves you off. The sun is high now, casting sharp shadows across the forum. Your arms ache, your tunic is damp with marble polish, and your sponge stick smells like it knows too much. But you have survived the morning. Just another routine shift in the greatest city on earth. Lunch, if it can be called that, is a ritual. Not sacred, not ceremonial, but something quietly observed, especially by those whose jobs hinge on obeying orders from men with ink-stained tunics and marble busts of themselves. You take your break in a patch of shade beside the tabularium, the great record hall, where even the dust seems filed in triplicate. You unwrap what's left of your morning bread, so hard now it might legally qualify as a weapon, and settle in on a cracked stone ledge. Beside you sits Hilarious, another servus publicus, whose name means cheerful but whose personality suggests he was perhaps misnamed. Olive pit, he offers, holding out a tiny waxed cloth like it's a gourmet platter. You take one. It's wrinkled, salty, and more pit than olive, but you nod in thanks. Lunch conversation among public slaves follows a predictable rhythm. Complaints, rumors, and wild hypotheticals. Did you hear the Greek physician dropped a jar of leeches on the Capitol stairs? Hilarious mutters between bites. They say a senator fainted. You raise an eyebrow. Were the leeches charged with treason? Still pending, he smirks. Then come the orders. A runner barefoot, grimy, and alarmingly young, waves a tablet at you. Forum delivery. Official seal, urgent. You sigh, take the tablet, and rise. The tablet is lightweight, wrapped in cord, bearing the stamped emblem of the Cursus Publicus, Rome's labyrinthine state-run postal system. Its contents are none of your business. Your task is simple. Deliver it from this side of the forum to the receiving desk near the Horia, the public granary. This would be easier if the forum weren't currently hosting a philosophical debate about the nature of debt. You wade through it carefully, dodging tunics and togas like a civic snake. Two men are shouting about virtue, while a third juggles figs for emphasis. Your destination is across from a fish stall that smells aggressively alive. The desk clerk, an elderly freedman with a face like a coin rubbed smooth, takes the tablet without a word and hands you a receipt slate in return. Then he pauses. While you're here, can you carry this too? He hands you another parcel, this one much heavier and wrapped in wax cloth. You glance at the label. It's going to the Aqueductus office near the Porta Capena, a long walk, even longer if you count the side glances and endless questions from guards who assume anyone carrying something must be up to something. Still, you nod. What else can you do? The route takes you past the base of the Palatine Hill. The sun is high and merciless now, glinting off roof tiles and making your tunic cling like second skin. You pass an artist painting a mural of Mars, the god of war, except Mars appears to be winking. Nearby, a group of children reenacts a gladiator match with sticks and exaggerated dying. As you pass the temple of Vesta, a curious thing happens. A street poet, clearly drunk on second-rate Falernian, calls out to you. "You there, do you know any verses of Ovid?" You blink. The answer is yes, you do actually. One of your few luxuries is whisper reading lines from a battered copy left behind at the latrine shelf. But before you can respond, the poet tosses you a date and declares, "Recite the Metamorphoses or face the wrath of my muses." You glance around. A few bystanders have paused, entertained by the prospect of a sweaty slave performing poetry while balancing a sealed wax bundle. "Only if you join in," you reply. The crowd chuckles. So, in the middle of the road, carrying unknown government correspondence and sweating through your sandals, you recite, "In nova fert animus mutatis, dicere formas." The poet nods solemnly. "Not bad," he says, before sitting down and promptly falling asleep against a column. You continue on. By the time you reach the aqueductus office, your legs are jelly, and your patience is somewhere near Hispania. The clerk at the door eyes your bundle with deep suspicion. "You sure this is for us?" You point to the seal. He shrugs, takes it, and mutters something about water ration charts and those idiots over in Ostia. Before you can escape, he adds, "We've had another cistern pigeon incident. If you know someone on pigeon duty." You don't respond, you just nod, turn around, and start the long walk back. The city is in full swing now. Markets roaring, children screeching, someone loudly debating the correct way to flavor garum. Rome pulses around you big, sweaty, loud, and strangely theatrical. You spot a pair of magistrates arguing over a bench placement, with a slave nearby dutifully holding an empty wine jug like it might be a scroll of law. Back at the forum, your feet dragging, you return the receipt slate to Scribonius. He frowns at it like it insulted his ancestors. "Late," he mutters. "Midday duty next." You barely suppress a groan. "Where?" He grins. "Post office, scroll sorting." Your heart lifts, scrolls shade silence. But no. When you arrive at the small postal room behind the Curia Julia, you discover your job isn't sorting scrolls. It's folding official notices and sealing them with wax, hot wax, in a room with no ventilation. You take a seat beside a pile of announcements, most of them informing residents about repairs to aqueducts, changes to temple access, or reminders not to block alleys with market stalls. You fold, seal, and try not to nod off into the wax. Around you, other public slaves do the same. It's the closest thing to peace you've had all day. Until someone knocks over the wax pot. You leap back just in time, but your sandal is now irrevocably fused to a bit of parchment, announcing an increase in tax on imported figs. You sigh. Later, as you carry the stack of now-cooled scrolls back to the records desk, a pigeon lands directly on your head. It doesn't move. You deliver the scrolls with quiet dignity. The pigeon remains seated. Scribonius looks up, sees the bird, and says, "Well, that explains tomorrow's assignment." You remove the bird. It is not offended. Rome, as always, rolls on. It's late afternoon now, the light slanting long and golden over the tiled rooftops and between the fluted columns of the forum. You'd think this would be a gentle wind down toward evening. You would be wrong, because this is when your duties veer sharply from the dusty dignity of scroll delivery and land once again in the odorous domain of statue washing. You've been reassigned, not to more scroll folding, not to candle lighting, which you've long suspected is just an excuse for some lucky soul to walk around looking ceremonial, but to cleaning yet another statue, a large one, of Jupiter no less. This particular Jupiter, god of sky and thunder, sits in the central forum. You know the one, right hand raised as if blessing the city, left hand resting on a bolt of lightning that's unfortunately become a favorite perch for pigeons. You're given a fresh pot of oil, 2 cloths, and a step stool that looks like it lost a fight with a chariot. You approach the statue like a soldier approaching a siege tower. Slowly, reluctantly, with every intention of surviving but no real belief that you will. Jupiter, for his part, stares down at you with blank marble authority. His face says, majestic deity. His chest says, someone spilled lentil stew here last week and no one cleaned it. As you climb the stool and begin to work, a breeze picks up. Not a pleasant one. It brings with it the mingled scents of garum, fermented fish sauce, wet laundry, and just a hint of burning wax from earlier in the day. You keep wiping. Midway through the shoulder, you hear laughter. You glance down. A small group of toga-clad students is pointing in your direction. One of them cups his hands and calls out, "Careful up there, slave. That's the king of gods you're massaging." You do not respond, but you do make a mental note. Next time they trip on uneven paving stones, you'll pretend you didn't see. Then comes a minor disruption. A drunk poet, possibly the same one from earlier, appears near the foot of the statue and starts declaiming loudly about Jupiter's majestic nostrils. You pause your cleaning to watch as a guard approaches, listens for a moment, then sighs and helps the man sit down before he tips into a barrel of olives. "Keep going," the guard says to you, as if you'd stopped for a vacation. After Jupiter, you're given a brief reprieve, if one could call it that, by being asked to inspect civic seating for cleanliness. This is not, as it turns out, metaphorical. It means literally walking around the forum and checking that benches are not smeared with things that should not be on benches. Your sponge stick comes out again. At one bench, near the Temple of Saturn, you find a roasted fig squashed into the wood like it had hopes of reincarnation. On another, an inky smear that looks suspiciously like someone testing whether octopus ink is really waterproof. The oddest bench, though, is one bearing a single perfectly placed pair of sandals. No person, just the shoes. You glance around. No one claims them. After a respectful pause, you set them aside. You're not paid enough to solve mysteries. As evening approaches, Scribonius appears again, holding a new wax tablet and a look of mild vengeance. "You're on folding duty," he says. You blink. "I already folded scrolls." "Not scrolls," he replies, "laundry." You are not allowed to groan audibly, but it happens anyway. Folding laundry, specifically the laundry of middle-ranking senators, is an art. Not a fine art, mind you, but one that apparently comes with rules, traditions, and deeply personal preferences. You arrive at the laundry courtyard to find a slave supervisor holding up a toga like it's a deceased relative. "Who folded this?" she demands. You point to yourself purely by reflex. She narrows her eyes. "Did you know there are 4 recognized toga fold styles in the western provinces alone?" You shake your head. You did not know this. "Each indicates rank, temperament, and philosophical leaning," she adds, while dramatically shaking out the fabric. "This one suggests a weak stance on the grain tax." You're given a quick tutorial, which includes terms like pleat of civic harmony and justice drape, all of which sound like they were invented this morning. Then, under supervision, you attempt to fold one. It is immediately deemed nervous and un-Roman. Eventually, you find a rhythm. Tuck, fold, pat, nod. Tuck, fold, pat, nod. It's oddly soothing, Once you stop listening to the ongoing argument about whether Senator Fulvius's robe should suggest stoicism or quiet ambition. You finish just as the sun dips behind the Capitoline Hill. The courtyard fills with shadows. A breeze rolls in, cool and promising the end of the day. You're given your final task of the evening, delivering the cleaned laundry back to the small stone lockers near the Senate House. You carry the bundles, now smelling faintly of lavender and civic pride, with careful steps. If you drop them, you'll be folding all over again. On your way back, a dog with mismatched ears trots beside you for several steps. You nod at him. He nods back, a brief alliance. As you return to the servants' quarters, your shoulders sag, your knees ache, and your right sandal is still partly wax-sealed from earlier. But you made it. Jupiter is gleaming. The benches are fig-free, and at least one toga now speaks the political language of optimism. Tomorrow is another day. You suspect it will involve latrines. It's nightfall in Rome, and you'd think your civic duties would now pause for a stretch, a meal, and maybe, just maybe, an uninterrupted nap on your favorite bench beneath the fig tree with the missing sandals. But alas, the empire does not sleep, and apparently neither do you. Tonight your assigned duty is part of a rotating rota, latrina extraordinarii, or, as your friend Hilarious grimly called it, the fancy toilet check. This isn't your usual communal bench with vinegar jars and questionable poetry. No, this latrine belongs to the Curia Julia, the Senate House, which means someone, somewhere, decided that you are now qualified to inspect the highest-ranking backside facilities in the Western world. Congratulations. The Senate latrine is actually quite impressive. Marble seats, real door curtains, even a tiny mural of Neptune wrestling an eel, for reasons that probably made more sense when the paint was fresh. You arrive with your toolkit, sponge stick, vinegar pot, clean cloth, and a small brass mirror for checking under the seats. You take a moment to psych yourself up, not because you fear grime, but because senators are notorious for leaving behind complaints faster than a horse with hiccups. As you begin cleaning, you notice an official notice pinned near the entrance. Reminder: sponges are not to be removed from the premises. Violations will be met with reduced grain rations. You pause, then smirk. That explains yesterday's rations tasting like passive-aggressive revenge. Halfway through your cleaning, you hear a rustle behind the partition. You freeze. "Who's there?" a voice calls, nervous, upper class. You reply, "Public sanitation, sir, just cleaning." "Oh, thank the gods," the voice says, and out steps a junior senator clutching a wax tablet and looking as if he's just wrestled a prophecy. "I dropped my notes," he says, "about the aqueduct speech. I need them." You blink, then gesture to the cleaning bucket. "They might be compromised." He groans, "The gods mock me." Together, you sift through the bucket's contents until you retrieve a somewhat wilted, vinegar-scented document. He thanks you profusely, swears you to secrecy, and hands you a silver coin, then immediately takes it back, saying, "Sorry, that was ceremonial." He gives you a fig instead. After you've checked every marble crevice and made peace with Neptune's eel mural, you're finally released from duty, or so you think. Because as you step into the corridor, a runner intercepts you barefoot again and hands you a fresh wax tablet. You sigh. Reading it reveals your next task. Emergency statue inspection. Jupiter again. Alleged vandalism. Your first thought is pigeons, but it's not. Arriving at the statue, torch in hand, you squint at Jupiter's base. Someone has scrawled something in charcoal. It reads, "Jupiter smells like fish sauce." You nod appreciatively. That's at least accurate. Still, defacing a god, even playfully, is frowned upon. You carefully erase the graffiti using vinegar and a handful of crushed herbs. As you scrub, you wonder about the person who wrote it. Drunk poet, dissatisfied cook, rogue philosopher, you'll never know. Once it's gone, you sit on the steps below Jupiter and exhale. The Forum is quiet now. Moonlight bathes the colonnades in silver. Even the pigeons have retired to their nests, probably dreaming of fresh statues to defile. And then comes the noise. A low, sloshing plunk noise. You know that sound, it's not good. You follow it past the Temple of Castor and Pollux, down a narrow stone path, and find a blocked drainage channel. Again, this is the third time this month, and there's only one person on night duty with a mop. You. The drain is clogged with wax scraps, pigeon feathers, and what looks alarmingly like a senator's lost slipper. You don your mop like a gladiator dons his helmet. You fight valiantly. You make jokes to yourself because no one else will. Thus died Marcus Slippius, victim of the Forum flood. It takes nearly an hour, but you win. The water begins to flow again, gurgling away toward the Tiber. You lean on your mop, triumphant, soaked to the knees in history and who knows what else. Finally, with the last check done and the torchlight flickering low, you make your way to the servants' hall. Hilaris is already asleep, snoring into a pillow made from folded laundry instructions. You find your usual spot, a patch of cool floor by the wall, and stretch out. But before sleep claims you, a stray thought crosses your mind. Tomorrow, someone is going to wonder why there's a senator's slipper in the sewer, and they'll probably blame you. You wake to the familiar ache in your knees, and a chorus of morning sounds. The scraping of sandals on stone, the bubbling complaint of a stewpot someone left on the coals too long, and the unmistakable groan of Hilaris trying to stand up without waking the dead or himself. Back to glory, he mutters, rubbing his back like it personally betrayed him. You sit up slowly, every joint protesting. Your tunic smells like vinegar, bird feathers, and mild regret. Outside, the Subura is already stirring, mothers yelling for breakfast assistance, someone chasing a goose, and a man trying to sell tunics that appear to have been stolen from a much shorter person. As you make your way toward the Officium Censoris, you wonder what delightful new duty awaits. You half expect rooftop pigeon herding, or dramatic reenactment of tax codes. But no, today, Scribonius has something simpler in store. He hands you a slate with a single phrase etched deeply, "Laundry collection, senatorial." You stare at it. I thought laundry folding was a punishment. Scribonius shrugs. This is a reward. You get to visit the senators' homes. You blink. To pick up their dirty tunics? Exactly. You open your mouth to question the logic, then close it again. Rome has no time for logic before sunrise. Your first stop is a modest domus near the Palatine slopes, home to Senator Pompilius, a man so old his toga has likely attended more votes than he has. His doorkeeper greets you with a sigh and a basket. Don't shake the one with the purple hem, he warns, it's temperamental. The garments are bundled in linen, and the topmost toga smells faintly of myrrh and onions. You nod, shoulder the basket, and move on. Next is the house of Livia Virilla, one of the few female senators in the capital, and a woman known for her obsession with wrinkle-free fabric. Her laundry comes in a cedar box. A slave hands it over with a whispered, "She folds them before she dirties them." As you collect the last basket, a large one, ominously damp, you begin the return walk to the washing quarters near the Tiber. You're halfway there when it happens. You're ambushed. Not by thieves, not by goats, by poets. 3 of them. Young, dramatic, sandal-tied to high types who have commandeered a street corner as their stage. One recognizes you. "Weren't you the fellow who recited Ovid with Stabianus last week?" he asks, finger pointed like a wand. You hesitate. "Depends. What's the penalty for being correct? None at all, he says brightly. We're holding auditions. For what? He grins. A dramatic reading of The Siege of Laundry Day. You have the perfect air of weary resignation. You're holding 3 baskets of soiled senatorial robes. You do, in fact, look weary. Before you can say no, he starts reading. Loudly. The piece is a tragedy about a tunic lost to mildew. One verse includes the line, "O linen of Lucius betrayed by a moldy fate." You try not to laugh, you fail, they applaud. You escape politely, promising to return for the finale. You won't. At the laundry quarters, the matron in charge, an elderly woman with arms like amphorae and eyes that see into your soul, grabs the baskets, inspects the contents, and makes a noise somewhere between a sigh and a curse. These senators, she mutters, can't wash their souls, so they wash their togas instead. She hands you a fresh load of clean linens and points to a corner table. Your job now, fold, but with dignity. You begin. The rhythm returns. Tuck, pleat, pat, adjust. Each fold is a tiny act of survival. These garments may not belong to you, but the symmetry of their pleats brings a quiet calm, a temporary illusion of order in a city that runs on noise and chaos. Midway through the 3rd toga, the matron leans in. Watch out for the senator's laundry curse. You pause. She nods gravely. Anyone who mishandles his robe gets reassigned to latrine descending. You're not sure what that entails, but it sounds like it involves gravel and sadness. When the folding is done, you're given your midday meal, a chickpea mash and a half-loaf of garlic bread. It tastes like salt, heat, and the occasional crunch that suggests maybe not all the gravel stayed in the latrines. As you eat on the laundry steps, you overhear 2 junior clerks whispering. I heard they're assigning someone to the temple of Janus tomorrow, one says. Why, the doors are shut. Exactly, the statue inside needs dusting. You glance upward. The temple of Janus is only opened in times of war, which Rome is technically not engaged in at the moment, unless you count the ongoing skirmish with the city's pigeon population. You choose slowly. Dusting a closed temple could be worse, but you're not scheduled there. Yet. After lunch, you're given one final task for the day. Organize the returned linen in the Senate lockers. It's quiet work, low risk, unless you misplace a hem, in which case a tribune might accuse you of political sabotage. Still, the quiet is nice. You hum a little Ovid to yourself. As you lock the final compartment, you glance at the nameplate. Marcus alias Glabrio. You remember him. Voted 3 times to ban foreign cabbages. His toga smells like lavender and unnecessary laws. The day ends with a note from Scribonius. Excellent fold on Glabrio's pleats. Tomorrow, statue detail. You roll your eyes, but not too far. After all, Jupiter misses you already. The next morning, your first thought is that the sun is being unusually loud. Your second thought is that someone nearby is cooking barley gruel, and they're doing it badly. Your third is that your arms still ache from folding togas that had stronger political opinions than you do. Hilaris is already awake, combing his beard with a fork he borrowed from the public mess and never returned. Statue duty, he says with mock gravity, holding up his own assignment slate. I'm back to Hercules. You? You check yours. For him again, Jupiter. He whistles. 3rd day in a row, either someone upstairs likes you or the pigeons have declared war. By the time you reach the statue, armed with a fresh oil rag, a bamboo scraper, and a small pail of vinegar-infused cleaning water, it's already too warm. The sun is climbing fast, casting everything in Rome into that golden, aggressive brightness that makes everyone squint and bump into amphorae. And there he is, Jupiter, gleaming, smug, and slightly shinier than yesterday. Which is ironic because today your job isn't to polish him. Today, you're checking for symbolic inconsistencies. What does that mean? You asked Scribonius. He responded, there's concern that someone altered the thunderbolt. That's it. That's the whole instruction. You stare at the statue. The thunderbolt, held aloft in his marble fist, looks the same as always. Dramatic, overcarved, vaguely resembling a chicken foot. You climb your step-stool anyway, inspect it closely, and notice something's off. It's not the shape, it's the scent. The thunderbolt smells like garum. You blink, lean closer. Yes, fermented fish sauce. Someone, most likely a prankster, possibly a philosopher, has anointed the thunderbolt with garum. Whether it's a ritual offering or a culinary critique is unclear. You clean it without commentary, though you do mutter, may the gods strike them mildly inconvenienced. As you descend the ladder, you're intercepted by a temple attendant who points to another statue, this one of Juno, queen of the gods. The drapery's been tampered with, she says, frowning. You inspect. Sure enough, someone's wrapped a small string of dried beans around her wrist. Not damaging exactly, but odd. Symbolic protest, the attendant offers. You nod slowly, possibly anti-legume sentiment. She does not laugh. Some people in Rome have forgotten how. While you're working on removing the beans, a civic official wanders over. He's dressed in fine robes and carries a scroll with excessive ribboning. Slave, he says, you're needed at the Temple of Concord. We've got a spillage. Spillage of what? You ask, instantly regretting it. Unclear, he says, and walks off. The Temple of Concord sits on the slope of the Capitoline Hill, and it's mostly quiet, used now for occasional lectures and even more occasional sacrifices. You arrive to find a sticky puddle just inside the doorway, surrounded by nervous acolytes holding their robes aloft. You sniff. It's wine, sweet, dark, and cloying. Apparently, someone tried to sneak in a jug of celebratory Falernian and dropped it mid-argument. You're handed a rag, a bucket, and a philosophical question. Is it still a holy space if the floor smells like a tavern? You clean the spill, muttering apologies to Concordia, goddess of harmony, and wondering whether she approves of mopping. One acolyte offers you a grape as thanks. You accept. It's sour. Fitting. By midday, you're back in the Forum, eating lunch on the Temple of Castor and Pollux steps. Today's rations are lentil mush and a heel of bread that could scratch a marble statue. Hilaris appears beside you, holding a cloth pouch and a suspiciously content expression. What's that, you ask? Guess who found a senator's coin purse in the fountain? You turned it in, right? Of course I did, he says, too quickly, then adds, but not before counting it. You nod, standard protocol. As you eat, you're interrupted by a commotion near the Temple of Saturn. A small crowd has gathered around a merchant wagon that's tipped over, scattering scrolls, apples, and what appears to be a bronze chicken. You're dispatched to assist, not with the bronze chicken, mercifully, but with crowd control and scroll recovery. A senator's aide is already there, trying to collect official documents that are now fluttering in the breeze like badly translated butterflies. You chase down two scrolls near the basilica. One reads, Senatorial Grain Report, Do Not Lose, which is both amusing and awkwardly ironic. You return it to the aide, who doesn't thank you but does grunt approvingly, which is as close to a medal as you're likely to get. The rest of the afternoon is quieter. You're assigned to sweep beneath the Arch of Tiberius, a task which mostly involves dodging tourists and humming to yourself. As the sun begins to dip, you return to the statue yard for final checks. That's when you notice something truly baffling. The statue of Mars, god of war, sword in hand, gaze fierce, now has something dangling from his arm. It's a sock. A lone, woolen, red-striped Roman sock. You look around, no one watching. You step closer, remove it, and hold it aloft like a sacred relic. Who, why, how? You have so many questions, but no answers. You place the sock in the lost property basket, note Mars adornment unauthorized, and head back to the quarters. By the time you lie down that night, your dreams are full of toga pleats and marble faces, all of whom seem to whisper, "You missed a spot." You're woken before dawn by the unmistakable sound of someone arguing with a goose. Not a figurative argument, a full-throated, one-sided, escalating debate about boundaries and personal space. From the cadence, you think the goose is winning. Hilarious groans from his bedroll. "It's the augur again," he mumbles. "Every week, same goose, same prophecy." You sit up slowly, your back a tightrope of complaints. Today feels like a get-through-it-without-dropping anything or anyone kind of day. At the Officium Censoris, Scribonius greets you with a smirk that bodes ill for your lower back. He hands you a slate reading, "Gate duty, Basilica Julia, sweep and polish." You stare. "The gate of the Basilica?" He nods. "The bronze one. Tribune Lentulus leaned on it yesterday and claimed it left a smear." You are now personally responsible for Bronze Gate sheen standards. Congratulations. The Basilica Julia is grand, full of echoes, political murmurs, and the smell of recently sanded benches. Its massive bronze gate is, you admit, slightly duller than usual, possibly due to the tribune's lunch being more olive oil than oration. You begin your work with a soft cloth and the kind of vinegar solution that smells slightly more dignified than yesterday's latrine vinegar. As you scrub, the morning traffic begins, clerks, petitioners, one man carrying what you hope is a bundled statue part and not an actual limb. Halfway through your third pass, a magistrate stops and frowns at your progress. "Make sure you polish toward the east," he says, symbolic alignment with Jupiter's gaze. You blink, his statue faces northwest. He waves that away, metaphorically. You adjust your polishing direction. Soon after, you're joined by an apprentice architect who seems delighted to talk about the gate's structural weaknesses. "This hinge," he says, pointing to the one you're kneeling beside, "was probably installed during Claudius's reign. They say it creaks in iambic pentameter." You test it, it creaks, he listens. "Tragic meter," he nods, "very fashionable." By midday, the bronze gleams and the metaphors are satisfied. You're allowed a break and you retreat to a shady corner behind the rostra. Your lunch is mercifully a bowl of barley with chopped nuts and a sliver of fish that may or may not still be considering resurrection. While eating, you overhear two scribes talking in low tones. The augurs report this morning something about ill omens from the Capitoline birds. Again. Apparently one of them walked in a circle and sneezed. You quietly chew. Rome can fall or rise depending on poultry behavior. Just as you're finishing your barley, a new task arrives, tucked into a wax tablet delivered by a page who looks like he's been running since Augustus. "Temple of Vesta," he pants, "oiling duty." You sigh. Another temple, another cleaning job, but at least this one's sacred. The Temple of Vesta is round, elegant, and fiercely protected. Inside burns the sacred fire of Rome, tended by the Vestal virgins. You do not go in, that's forbidden, but you're tasked with oiling the outer bronze trim and sweeping the path. You work quietly, respectfully. The temple gives off a hush, even in the bustle of the forum. A few passers-by slow down to watch, some nodding in approval. One man stops and whispers, "Careful, that statue base hasn't been moved in 100 years. Some say it rests on a forgotten altar." You eye the statue. It's of a wolf nursing twin boys Romulus and Remus. The bronze is green with age and wisdom. You dust it gently, almost reverently. And then a soft clink. You look down. A coin, small, silver, freshly minted. It didn't fall from you. You look around. No one seems to notice. You pick it up. It bears the image of a she-wolf howling. An omen. You consider turning it in, then tuck it in your tunic for now. Maybe ask Hilarious later. As the sun drops lower, your final assignment of the day arrives. Assist the lamplighters. You're not actually lighting lamps. That job is restricted to the city's official lucernary. But you're helping carry the oil and wicks, which means lots of walking, lots of standing still and trying not to spill. You follow the lucernarius named Balbus, who grunts more than he speaks and smells like boiled onions. Together, you move through the forum and along the Via Sacra, lighting one lamp at a time. Each lamp flares briefly before settling into a warm, soft glow. As darkness falls, Rome transforms, shadows stretch, voices soften, and the marble of temples reflects the lamplight like molten gold. You pause near the arch of Septimius Severus and look back at the forum. You cleaned that gate, you swept that temple path. Somewhere in there is a sock that once dangled from Mars. Balbus grunts again, done. You nod, you are. Back in your quarters, Hilarious is already asleep. You sit on your mat, pull out the silver coin, and stare at it under the flickering wall lamp. A wolf, a howl, a mystery. And tomorrow, probably more vinegar. The sun is barely a suggestion on the horizon when Scribonius greets you with a smirk and a new assignment. He holds up a wax tablet like it's a prized fish. Congratulations, he says. You've been selected for clerical duties near the Basilica Aemilia. High profile, civic-facing, deeply prestigious. You stare at him. That means paperwork, he confirms. You resist the urge to cheer. The Basilica Aemilia is one of the grandest buildings in the Forum, long, columned, echoing, and generally packed with arguments about inheritance. Inside, you're directed to a corner table where a scribe named Maximus, who looks like he's seen 25 wars and lived through none of them, nods curtly and gestures to a pile of wax tablets. Copy, he grunts, but make it legible. The content, local property disputes mostly, deeds, wall placements, olive tree boundaries. Nothing glamorous, but the writing work is a rare chance to sit down, shade included. You accept a stylus with something close to reverence. You fall into rhythm, copy, scratch, check, repeat. You copy a tablet about two brothers arguing over a shared fig tree. Another about whether a rooftop pigeon coop constitutes an illegal extension. A third references a property line defined by the old goat skull near the laurel bush, which you hope was once legally binding. You've only been at it an hour when you overhear something odd. Two advocates behind you are whispering about a shipment scrolls intercepted at the Porta Capena. Something about the wrong wax blend and misleading civic poems. You keep your head down, ears open. Maximus catches you pausing. Keep writing, he growls. That fig tree isn't going to register itself. As midday approaches, a boy in a mustard-stained tunic runs into the basilica shouting, "Fish, fish, disaster," and disappears into a side corridor. You blink, glance at Maximus. He shrugs. Could be literal, could be metaphorical, it's Rome. You're excused briefly for lunch. The bread today is slightly softer than usual, with a generous smear of mashed broad beans. Hilarious joins you on the marble steps. You hear about the fish, he asks. Only the disaster part. He leans in. Word is, someone delivered a basket of spoiled mullet to the temple of Portunus during a dedication ceremony. You wince, unlucky. And, he adds with raised eyebrows, Someone has to cart the mess to the refuse pit. You both glance toward the tabularium. Neither of you has that task, yet. Just as you finish your last bite, a new instruction arrives, this one via scroll, sealed with wax and a thumbprint. You crack it open. You are hereby reassigned to accompany the censor's office for the inventory of civic signage. You frown. Signage? Hilarious chuckles. You're reading street signs today. The inventory project involves walking block by block, accompanied by an elderly official named Plautus, who coughs often and calls everyone young man, regardless of age or gender. He points with his walking stick at each inscription. That one's crooked, he mutters. Fix it. I don't. Write it down. Don't argue. The signs are mostly carved tablets nailed above archways and fountains. No graffiti within this alcove. Don't let goats climb the shrine steps. Spitting near temples is forbidden. Some are newer, some clearly ignored. At one corner near the Subura, you find a sign that reads, "Do not tie donkeys to the statues." Below it stands a donkey, tied to a statue. You jot it down anyway. Halfway through the route, Plautus points to an old inscription so weather-worn, it's almost illegible. Know what that one used to say? He asks. You squint. No. It used to say, "Citizens be proud," that's all, just that. He chuckles. We don't post that sort anymore. The inventory concludes just before dusk. Your feet ache, your stylus hand is cramping, and your wax slate looks like it's been used to map an invasion. Back at the forum, as you hand off your notes to a bored clerk, you hear someone call your name. It's a messenger from the Temple of Saturn. We found something, he says, handing you a small pouch. Inside is a pair of sandals, red-strapped, clearly worn and left behind days ago near the temple's eastern steps. There's also a scrap of parchment. To whomever finds these, please walk a little in my place. You frown. A riddle. The messenger shrugs. It's Rome, might be art, might be madness. You carry the sandals back with you, unsure what to make of it. You place them beside the basket of lost items, next to the sock from Mars, next to a broken wax stylus and a tiny painted chicken. Rome's strange things pile up slowly, like dust beneath statues. And someone has to keep track of it all. The city is unusually foggy this morning, a low mist curling between the columns and creeping along cobblestones like it's trying to listen in on secrets. You step outside and immediately step in something. You don't ask what, you never ask what. Scribonius hands you a wax tablet with the usual flair of someone bestowing a divine edict. You brace yourself. Congratulations, he says without smiling. You've been reassigned to latrine inventory. You blink. Again? No, he says, waving off your concern. Not cleaning, just inventory. You're simply counting sponges. You stare. That's it. Well, he adds, and checking their condition. Ah, there it is. Your destination is the large public forica near the Theater of Marcellus, one of the busiest latrines in the city, which means one thing: lots of people, lots of sponge turnover. As you approach, the smell precedes you, not horrible but informative. A sign near the archway reads, "Please do not remove the sponges. May the gods judge you." Inside, the forica is quiet for the moment. A few early risers are seated in reflective silence. You nod respectfully, move to the storage cubbies, and begin your count. Sponge on a stick, sponge on a stick, sponge, not on a stick. You write that one down, detached sponge, possibly intentional. Further in, you find a collection of sponges that appear to have been dyed with some sort of pigment, purple, blue, even a troubling green. Either someone's experimenting with festival colors, or there's been a laundry incident. As you log each sponge and sniff test your dignity, you're joined by a fellow public slave named Alia, She has the air of someone who has seen too many mysteries and not enough explanations. Found one stuffed with lavender yesterday, she mutters. User was a senator, claimed it was for morale. You nod solemnly. Might start doing that myself. While taking inventory, you notice something odd, a sponge stick tucked behind the cistern, completely unused and sealed in waxed linen, brand new. You pull it out. Etched into the wood are small letters, "To Mars, may your backside find peace." You stare at it, a prank, an offering, a very odd love note. You leave it where it was. After completing your list, 37 sponges, 7 partials, 3 aromatics, you drop off the notes with the sanitation clerk, who thanks you with the haunted eyes of a man who dreams of vinegar. Before you can escape, another clerk stops you. "Temple of Mercury," he says. "They need help with a door." You sigh, doors again. The Temple of Mercury is smaller than most, nestled between a wine shop and an alley that smells like regret. Its bronze door has reportedly been squeaking in a manner not befitting divine commerce. When you arrive, you find the issue immediately. The hinges are bone dry. You fetch oil, a rag, and begin the gentle, creaky restoration of Mercury's entrance. While you work, a merchant nearby hawks his wares: wax tablets, imported olives, scrolls labeled 100 aphorisms for successful senators. A child darts past, then stops and watches you. "What are you doing?" "Fixing the god's door," you say. She nods solemnly. "Does he pay well?" You smile. "He pays in fewer squeaks." After finishing the door, you notice something peculiar. A small pile of coins just inside the temple entrance, not in the offering bowl, but stacked neatly on a windowsill. You mention it to the priest. "Ah," he says, "left by a petitioner. Said Mercury spoke to him in a dream, told him to stack them in threes." You arch a brow. "Dreams are binding," the priest says with a shrug. Back in the forum, you take a brief lunch: bread, olives, and a few bites of what might once have been cheese. Hilaris joins you, chewing dramatically. "I got bath duty," he says. "Found a gold ring in the drain, thought about keeping it. And..." He sighs, turned it in, got a pat on the shoulder from a guy with fish breath. You finish eating just as a messenger arrives with a new assignment. "Emergency assistance," he says breathlessly. "Temple of Venus, sculpture incident." You arrive to find chaos, or at least Roman chaos, which involves 3 priests arguing in whispers and a statue that's been enhanced. Someone, likely during the night, has added a garland of turnips around Venus's neck. Not carved turnips, actual turnips. You help carefully remove them, trying not to bruise the stone or the vegetables. One priest mutters, "Blasphemy by garnish." Another insists it's a satire. The third just looks hungry. The turnips are quietly disposed of. As you dust the statue's base, you find a scrap of parchment wedged in the pedestal. "Aphrodite likes figs better." You wonder if this is a trend. Maybe some kind of underground produce cult. You make a mental note to check with the graffiti wall near the latrines. Back at the quarters, you update the inventory with one last note. Sponge number 23, missing. Possibly relocated to personal shrine. You lie down on your mat, exhausted but clean of conscience. Somewhere in the distance, a goose honks ominously. Morning arrives not with a sunrise, but with the sharp, accusatory clang of a dropped amphora. You sit bolt upright. Hilaris rolls over and mutters something about figs. Outside your quarters, the usual commotion of Roman life is already brewing, vendors shouting, donkeys braying, and the unmistakable squish of someone stepping where the fishmonger washes his stall. Today's slate is handed to you by a junior clerk with the posture of a weary vine. It reads, "Assignment, Basilica Argentaria, door check, minor complaints about squeaks and symbolism." You sigh. Another door. Rome is a city of doors, and apparently you are its appointed doorman. The Basilica Argentaria, despite its fancy name, is not made of silver. It's a banking and legal structure near the Forum, and its door has recently become a matter of minor scandal. You arrive to find two clients outside whispering about omens. The door creaked 3 times before opening, one says, pale with superstition. It's a sign of poor maintenance, you mutter, stepping around them with your oil flask. As you kneel by the door's hinge, you notice something odd, a smear of what looks like honey. You sniff it cautiously. Definitely honey. There are even tiny seeds stuck in it. Someone, you realize, has anointed the door. Sacrificial pastry accident, a passing priest offers, happens more often than you'd think. You oil the hinge, clean off the honey, and check the locking mechanism. While doing so, you overhear one of the scribes whispering to a client, he's the sponge counter. They trust him with symbolism now. It's not clear if that's a compliment. You finish your repairs and leave a small note. Hinge cleaned. Door no longer creaks in iambic or otherwise. You head back toward the Forum for a short break, only to be stopped by a runner waving a wax tablet. Emergency errand, he pants. You're to escort the civic chicken. It's festival day. You blink. The what? The chicken, he repeats, as if you're the one being strange. It turns out once a year, for a local harvest festival, a ceremonial chicken is paraded from the Temple of Ceres to the grain office. It is considered good luck, and today you are its chaperone. The chicken, named Minerva, no relation to the goddess you hope, is already tethered to a little cart decorated with grain stalks and ribbons. You're handed the reins. She blinks at you, unimpressed. With 2 musicians playing a tune that sounds like a sad march through spilled soup, you begin your procession. Citizens smile. A child throws barley in the street. The chicken pecks at it and then at your sandal. You take it personally. Halfway there, a goat tries to join the parade. You wave it off. Minerva fluffs her feathers, clearly offended by the intrusion. At the granary, she is welcomed with a scattering of millet and a small statuette of Ceres. Ceremony complete. You receive a barley cake and a thank you nod. After the chicken debacle, you're sent to the post office. This time, your job is to sort returned messages. Specifically, messages that failed to reach their destinations. These include a letter addressed to that man who sells cheese on Tuesdays, a scroll with only the word sorry and a crude drawing of a sandal, a wax tablet listing 27 types of garum, all marked urgent. You sort them into baskets, unknown, undeliverable, probably art. While working, you find one scroll labeled to the sponge boy. You blink. That's probably you. You open it cautiously. Inside is a single sentence. I replaced number 23. Thought you should know. There's no name, just a small drawing of a smiling sponge. You're too tired to be surprised. As evening falls, you're called for one final task. Lamp checking along the sacred way. You walk with the lucernarius, inspecting each flame, adjusting wicks and replacing oil. One lamp won't stay lit. You try 3 times. Finally, the lucernarius shrugs, must be haunted. You nod. We'll mark it temperamental. As you return, the moon hangs low and warm above the city. The statues gleam. The temples hum with night sounds. Somewhere, a bard plays a slow, strange tune about figs and fate. Back in your quarters, Hilaris greets you with a grin. Good news, he says, holding up a small wax slate. You're off latrine duty tomorrow. You blink. What's the bad news? You're on pest inspection. You stare. Rats, he says cheerfully, real ones this time, congratulations. You lie down, wrap your cloak around your shoulders, and close your eyes. Somewhere out there, a chicken rests easy. You wake to a scratching sound. Not a metaphorical scratching the kind poets ramble about in dreams and scrolls. No, this is real, physical, incessant, sharp. You open your eyes to see a rat, sitting on your sandal, eating a fig. It looks at you with the casual entitlement of a minor deity. Hilaris, across the room, is already awake. He's feeding something small out of a pouch. Breadcrumbs, he mutters, for diplomacy. You don't ask. Today's assignment, according to Scribonius, who delivers the news with a straight face and zero apparent humor, is pest inspection for the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer. Think of it as exploratory patrol, he says, public safety. You suspect he means public punishment. You're given the standard kit, a torch, a wax slate, a short rope, and a large stick. You're not told what the stick is for, but you can guess. The Cloaca Maxima is more than a sewer. It's a feat of Roman engineering, a pride of the Republic, and currently a warm, echoing tunnel filled with mystery, moisture, and the occasional dropped sandal. You descend with a small team, Aelia the latrine veteran, Marcellus the rope holder, and one scribe named Florus, who insists on taking notes about the smells. This one, Florus sniffs near a runoff pipe, is definitely cabbage-based. You trudge carefully along the walkway, torchlight flickering against the stone. The air is damp, heavy, and full of the kind of silence that always comes before something falls from the ceiling. A rat scurries past, then another, then three. You note this in your slate, possible rat assembly, intent unclear. Midway through the tunnel, you find what you were not hoping to find. A jam. Not metaphorical, not poetic, an actual physical blockage of debris, twigs, feathers, fruit rinds, wax scraps, and what appears to be a small bronze bust of Emperor Claudius, nose chipped. Artistic protest, Aelia offers. You clear the debris with the stick, revealing a rush of water that gurgles free with a noise that sounds faintly like relief. The rats retreat. You do not chase them. They have diplomatic immunity. As you mark the jam cleared, Florus stops you. Look at this, he says, pointing to the wall. Someone's carved something in the stone. It's faint, eroded, but legible. Here worked Gaius, who loved olives and quiet. You pause. That's kind of beautiful. You make a note in your slate, Gaius, appreciated. When the inspection ends, you return blinking into the sun. You smell like vinegar, mold, and ancient ambition, but you've survived. And there's still more day left. Scribonius greets you with a new instruction. The librarius near the Temple of Saturn needs assistance. Scroll sorting. Worse, scroll labeling. The Temple of Saturn's library annex is full of dusty shelves, overstuffed scroll bins, and a cat who appears to be in charge. You're given a small brush and a pot of ink. Your job, add titles to scrolls based on content. One scroll contains 27 different recipes for lentils. Another is a first-hand account of a gladiator refusing to fight because of a headache. A third is simply titled, The Proper Way to Frown at Tribunes. You're not sure if it's satire or instruction. You label it as both. While working, you find an unlabeled scroll with a doodle of a fish and the words, "Do not open until Neptune returns." You set it aside. Your back aches, your fingers are ink-stained, but it's peaceful work. Outside, the forum hums. You hear merchants haggling over oyster prices, a street performer juggling amphory, and somewhere, a woman shouting that someone stole her goat. Probably true. Just before dusk, the librarian hands you a scroll. Found this among the archives, thought you'd appreciate it. You open it to find a list, crudely drawn sponges, numbered, each with a note. Number 7, suspiciously cheerful. Number 15 has gone missing. Last seen near Temple of Janus. Number 23, returned by anonymous admirer. You blink. It's your sponge log. Someone's been copying it, studying it. You look at the librarian. He shrugs. Could be a fan, could be the pigeon guy, we don't know. As the sky turns gold, you're sent to assist with lighting the torches near the Tiber. You walk with another assistant who hums the same tune over and over, something about figs and fate again. As you light each flame, you look across the water and think, Rome never stops. Even its sewers write poetry. You return to your quarters and collapse onto your mat. A single rat sits in the corner, eating what appears to be your backup sandal. You nod at him, he nods back. And the day ends. You wake to find your right sandal missing. Not misplaced, missing. Replaced, in fact, by a sardonic piece of pottery with a smiley face scratched into it. Hilaris inspects the pottery. Ah, he says, deadpan, you've been pranked by the sundial crew. You stare. There's a sundial crew. Oh yes, he nods, very precise, very smug. Before you can retaliate or find a matching sandal, you're summoned to the officium censorus. Scribonius meets you at the door with what looks like suppressed glee. You're late, he says without checking the sundial, which is ironic. You blink, because? You're on time adjustment detail, sundials. You stifle a groan. Somewhere, the gods are laughing. Your task today, assist the horologery, the city's sundial overseers, in confirming that all civic timepieces are properly positioned. This sounds simple. It is not. The first stop is the sundial, near the temple of Castor and Pollux, a large bronze plate embedded into the plaza with engraved hour lines, and a central gnomon casting the shadow. Your job is to stand there, measure the shadow with a stick, and say whether it aligns with the theory, which is made more difficult by the presence of several idlers who've developed personal relationships with the sundial. It's been 5 minutes fast since the Saturnalia, one claims. I use the pigeon shadow, says another. You ignore them and mark your findings. The shadow is off by quite a bit. You note, shadow angle suggests either sundial misalignment or the sun being insubordinate. You adjust the dial by a hair only to have a child shout, "Hey, I was using that for hopscotch." Next stop, the public bath sundial, where someone has affixed a fig leaf over the gnomon for modesty. You remove it gently and continue. At the forum's east end, the civic sundial is partially shaded by a recently built statue of a provincial governor. The shadow is split, making it impossible to read accurately. Can't we move the statue? You ask the overseer. He snorts. The governor paid for it. Apparently, his elbow points to noon. You note, time currently expressed via elbow may confuse visitors. Just as you finish logging that, a senator storms by, robes billowing, and mutters, "Late again, I blame the Gauls." You make another note, misused sundial, possibly increasing civic blame displacement. At midday, you're allowed a brief rest. Lunch is fig bread and a boiled egg with a hairline crack. Hilaris joins you, unwrapping what looks like an illegal meat pie. I met a sundial saboteur, he says through a mouthful. Claims they move one dial just a bit each day to test if the officials notice. You blink, do they? Never. You're sent for afternoon duty at the temple of Sol Invictus, patron of the unconquered sun, appropriate, if ironic. Your task, polish the golden plate beside the temple's ceremonial sundial. While working, you discover that someone has carved a short poem into the rim. O shadow that ticks without tick, may you stop when I nap quick. You smile. It's a terrible poem, but you appreciate the sentiment. Then, disaster. A crowd gathers around the main forum sundial, pointing, gesturing, arguing. You're called in to investigate. Apparently, a local merchant claimed the sundial told him it was still morning, but the tax collector said otherwise. A fight ensued. Now there's fig pulp everywhere, and a broken amphora stuck to the gnomon. You're handed a fresh rag, and a tiny chisel. Clean it up, and if you can, clarify the time. You glance at the sky. It's definitely afternoon, probably. You chisel off the fig, polish the gnomon, and reposition it with the help of a reference chart that might have last been updated when Cicero had knees. The shadow shifts slightly. An old man watching says, "Much better. Now I can plan my naps again." You finish your notes, return the measuring stick, walk back to the officium. Scribonius looks up as you approach. "So," he says, "is time still working?" "For now," you reply. He nods. "Excellent, tomorrow's sewer records." You sigh, thank him sarcastically, and retreat to your quarters. That evening, a mysterious figure leaves a pair of matching sandals by your door. No note, no message. Just a carved smiley face on each sole. Rome, as always, keeps time, even when its clocks are full of figs. Today begins with an argument about olive oil. Not your olive oil public rations, the kind handed out each week to servipublici like yourself, measured by a disgruntled quartermaster with a leaky amphora and a deep mistrust of measurement. You're standing in line, as you do every 6 days, waiting for your ladleful. Hilarus is just ahead, holding out his clay jar like it's a sacred relic. "Standard ration," he says firmly. The quartermaster frowns. "You're on light duty detail, you get light grade." "What does that mean?" Hilarus asks, squinting. "More water, less olive," the man says. Hilarus sniffs the ladle. "This smells like disappointment." You receive your own portion, barely enough to glaze a lentil, and walk away in silence. Back in the quarters, Scribonius is already pacing. You recognize the look. Either there's been a small riot in the grain queue or someone misplaced a very important scroll. It's the scroll. "Missing shipment record," he says, holding up a blank wax tablet. "Granary logs for Aventine Hill, vanished." You blink. "And you want me to?" "Check the granary, check the scribe's office, check the well, just in case." Ah, the classic Roman trifecta of lost paperwork possibilities. You begin at the Horia Publica, Rome's massive granary complex near the Tiber. It's a beehive of carts, shouting clerks, spilled grain, and one truly enormous cat sitting atop a scale. You ask the head clerk about the missing scroll. He frowns, chews his lip, then says, "You'll want the scribe Lucullus. He's at lunch, been gone since second hour." Of course he has. While waiting, you help reorganize some mislabeled bins. You discover one tagged barley emergency use only, filled entirely with olives. Another reads bread old, which you don't open. Lucullus returns smelling like onions and entitlement. When you ask about the scroll, he waves you toward a pile of slightly damp wax tablets. "I think it fell near the pigeon crate." You pause. "You have a pigeon crate?" "Message birds," he shrugs. "Mostly they eat the messages." You search the area, carefully avoiding droppings, and eventually find a half-erased tablet stuck between a crate and a sack of chickpeas. It's labeled Grain Log Aventine, Copy 3. You exhale. Another mystery barely solved. You bring the scroll back to Scribonius, who inspects it as if it might explode. "This says 2 carts of millet went missing," he says. You wait. He looks up. "Guess what you're doing this afternoon?" You sigh. You're assigned to the Aventine Hill Depot to investigate the whereabouts of 2 wagons worth of millet. This is not glamorous detective work. It's more, wander around and ask if anyone's hoarding grain. You climb the hill, legs aching, past the temple of Diana and a group of schoolboys reciting poetry in the street. One pauses to yell "millet thief" at a goat. You make a note to report the goat anyway, just in case. At the depot, you meet a man named Publius, who seems entirely too cheerful for someone covered in flour dust. "Millet?" he asks. "No theft here, just miscounts." "2 whole wagons?" you ask. He shrugs. "Big wagons, bad counters." You poke around the storage sheds and eventually locate what appears to be a suspiciously well-hidden stack of millet sacks behind a curtain labeled "Do Not Enter, Civic Paint Supply." You pull the curtain back and stare. "Well," Publius says, suddenly behind you, "there they are." You turn slowly. "Why hide them?" He shrugs again. "We needed space for the figs. It was a whole thing." You make a note. "Millet relocated for fig emergency, possibly unreported." You help haul the sacks back into the proper ledger space. It's a lot of millet. You begin to feel mildly haunted by grains. By dusk, you're covered in dust, sweat, and a sense of civic injustice. You return to Scribonius with your notes and a sample of the millet, just to prove it exists. He scans your findings, nods, and mutters, "Well, at least it's not another sponge theft." You don't mention that you found a sponge lodged inside one of the millet sacks. It's been a long day. Back in your quarters, you wash your hands in the communal basin, noticing someone has written "olive oil for all" on the rim in wax. Hilaris wanders in, clutching a small, irregular amphora. "What's that?" you ask. He grins. "Found a guy near the fish gate trading good oil for poetry." You raise an eyebrow. "I gave him a haiku about leg cramps," he says. You shake your head, lie down, and pull your cloak around your shoulders. Tomorrow, probably, someone will declare war on chickpeas. But tonight there is peace, and maybe, if you're lucky, just enough oil to dream. You're jolted awake by someone banging on a bronze pan. "Up," a voice shouts, "emergency astrologer request." You blink at the ceiling, trying to process the sentence. Across the room, Hilaris groans, "Ah, not the stars again." You stumble into your tunic, splash some water on your face, and shuffle toward the courtyard, where a priest with frantic hair is waving a wax tablet in all directions. "You," he points, "you've been chosen." "For what?" you manage. The astrologer requests a slave for errands. The gods have spoken, possibly. You nod, as one does. The astrologer's chambers are tucked behind the Temple of Apollo. You're greeted by a nervous-looking man in a yellowed robe, covered in ink stains and what may be crumbs. "I'm Sextus," he says, ushering you in. "I read the sky. Bad things are happening." You glance up. It's still early morning. The sky looks innocent. "There's a convergence," he continues. "Mars and Saturn. Something about twins or cabbages. It's unclear. Your job, it turns out, is to retrieve star charts from various civic libraries, fetch specific types of incense, and, most importantly, keep people from interrupting Sextus while he panics professionally. You begin at the Archive of Germanicus, where you're handed a rolled chart labeled Backup Sky, version 2, then to the Temple of Janus, where a sleepy novice hands you a small pouch of incense with the warning, "Don't sniff this unless you want to dream in hexameter." You return to Sextus, who's drawn a series of squiggles on the floor and is muttering to a clay bowl. He takes the incense, sprinkles it with flair, then looks up at you. "You must go to the Basilica Julia," he says. "Give this to Tribune Lentils." He hands you a folded note. It explains everything. The note reads, "Stars angry, postpone grain speech, beware twins." You deliver it with a straight face. Lentulus reads it, sighs, and mutters something about "those infernal goats again." He dismisses you with a wave. On your way back, a woman stops you outside the Temple of Vesta. "Is it true?" she asks. Is what true? That the stars are cursed this week, my husband sneezed twice. You offer the standard civic reassurance. If he sneezes a third time, consult a priest. She nods, deeply impressed. Sextus is pacing when you return. The readings are getting worse, he says. Mars has entered retro-vexation. You raise a brow. Is that real? No, he admits, but it sounds terrifying. You spend the rest of the afternoon running notes between Sextus and other astrologers across the city. Most of them are equally frazzled. One insists the moon is smirking too much. Another claims that if pigeons roost on both shoulders at once, the republic will wobble. You take this all in stride. At one point, you deliver a scroll to the Arville brethren, only to be asked to recite it aloud while standing on one foot. Balance test, they explain. You pass. Just before dusk, Sextus calms down, slightly. He's now humming to himself while drawing a diagram of a goat inside a fish. I've stabilized the house of Venus, he says. You nod. Should I go? One last task, he says. Visit the graffiti wall near the forum. Someone's been posting dreams. I need intel. The wall is infamous for its scribbles, poems, insults, pictographs of politicians with unfortunate anatomy. You find the latest dream series at the bottom. A fig tree grew out of my scroll. A senator rode a sponge like a chariot. The pigeons applauded. You write them down. It feels familiar. Back in Sextus's chamber, you recite the dream notes. He gasps. The fig scroll dream, I predicted this. You hand him your final delivery log, and he scrawls, augury fulfilled, at the bottom. You're released with a final instruction. Avoid goats until next moon. As you return to your quarters, the sky is dotted with stars, quiet, blinking, ancient. Hilaris is already lying down. You look like you got yelled at by Orion. You sit beside him and smile. Worse, I worked for Sextus. He whistles. That explains the goat smell. You lie back. Rome hums with its usual strange energy, part onion, part destiny. Above, Mars shines faintly. And you dream of fig scrolls and chariots made of sponge. Morning arrives with a bang. Literally. Someone's dropped a barrel near the forum, and now insists it slipped on philosophy. You rise, rub your eyes, and decide today you will not question metaphors before breakfast. Your assignment slate today reads simply, Forum cleanup, incident clog near Temple of Ceres, possible sabotage. You raise an eyebrow. Sabotage? Scribonius shrugs. Or someone dropped a melon. Either way, go check. Armed with your trusty mop, bucket, and a new pair of sandals that still creak like startled mice, you make your way through the already bustling forum. Merchants are shouting. A flute player is trying to tune by ear alone, and a boy with a basket of dead fish runs past you shouting, tax-free trout. At the Temple of Ceres, goddess of agriculture, the problem reveals itself quickly. A large drain near the temple's front steps is backed up. Water is pooling. Flies are beginning to have meetings. You lift the grate. The blockage is obvious. 3 bundles of reeds, 2 wax scrolls, and a sandal. Not just any sandal, this one has gold embroidery and the faint outline of a senator's toe. You dig out the mess, setting aside the scrolls. One is labeled Tribune Fulvius Budget Notes. The other reads Draft, New Law, No Singing in Bathhouses. You hand both to a passing clerk, who doesn't even blink, before stuffing them in his bag. As you mop the last of the overflow, a magistrate arrives nose high, hands folded. Was this, he asks carefully, foreign sabotage? You pause. There's a moment in the life of every public slave where you decide whether or not to make someone feel clever. Yes, you say, likely the Gauls. He nods gravely and walks off to inform the Senate. You note on your slate, clog cleared, sabotage suspected, confidence low. You're just about to head back when a runner intercepts you. "Inspection at the public record vault," he huffs. "Mildew report." You blink. That's a real thing? Apparently mildew can invalidate census tablets. You follow him to a tucked-away stone building behind the Temple of Saturn. Inside, the vault is dark, musty, and filled with the rustling sounds of nervous scribes. You're handed a sponge, a small torch, and a list of tablets to inspect. Most are fine, some are damp, one is suspiciously sticky. You ask a scribe. "Wine," he says sheepishly. "We had a Saturnalia toast last week. It got celebratory." You mark that scroll, suspect for revision, possibly intoxicated. At lunch, you find Hilaris seated beneath the statue of Romulus, eating a fried flatbread the size of his head. "Trade," he offers, holding up half. You give him half your boiled barley cake. It's a fair deal. "You hear the big news?" he says through a mouthful. "What?" "They're blaming the clogged drain on Gauls." You nod. "I know. You started it." You shrug. It felt true in the moment. He grins. "You're practically a politician." You spend the afternoon near the grain office, helping a clerk reorganize bins mislabeled during last week's brief sandstorm. You find one crate labeled "wheat suspicious" and another that contains nothing but feathers. "No idea where those came from," the clerk says, frowning. You reassign it as "feathers inclassified." Just before dusk, you're asked to help write a new public notice regarding livestock near monuments. The draft reads, "All goats, fowl and lesser beasts shall be kept at no less than 2 arm lengths from civic marble." You suggest they clarify lesser beasts. The scribe writes in, "including but not limited to ducks, weasels, and opinionated cats." The new tablet is carved, painted, and nailed to the base of the Temple of Concord. As you watch, a cat immediately strolls by and rubs its side against the post. You log it. Immediate violation by feline, consequences pending. The last task of the day comes unannounced. A boy with a flute chases you down near the rostra. "You're needed at the bathhouse," he gasps. "There's something wrong with the steam." The public thermi is, as always, humid and echoing. The issue turns out to be an improperly sealed vent, which is funneling hot air into the dressing room. Everyone's togas are limp and slightly boiled. You, with a cloth, some resin, and sheer persistence, fix the vent. The steam redirects. A cheer goes up from the bathers, most of whom are too relaxed to mean it. One man offers you a fig. Another gives you advice about keeping your knees warm in winter. By the time you walk home, your tunic is damp, your sandals are finally quiet, and you've possibly implicated an entire people in a drainage accident. Not a bad day. The night was cool, and for once the floor beneath your sleeping mat didn't feel like it was trying to resculpt your spine. You wake early before the pan clangs, before Hilaris begins snoring backward again, and decide to step outside. The forum at dawn is rare, serene. The marble columns cast long shadows. A stray dog chases its tail near the Temple of Vesta. The statue of Jupiter gleams faintly, as if winking in approval. Today's assignment is scribbled on a slate, hanging from a post outside the quarters. Assist record keeper, Friedman office. You blink. Friedman office? That's new. You arrive at a modest structure tucked behind the Temple of Janus. A wooden plaque outside reads, "Registry of Manumission and Freed Status, Western Quadrant." Inside, the room is stacked floor to ceiling with scrolls, tablets, and waxed files. A man with thick spectacles looks up and motions you over. "Welcome," he says. "We track every freedman in this district. You're here to assist with cross-verification." He hands you a list. Names, former owners, trade licenses, known aliases. Your job is to match the records on the scrolls to the updated wax tablets and report discrepancies. You begin. There's Lucius the cobbler now calling himself Lucianus, and recently arrested for selling left-foot sandals in pairs. You check off the alias. There's Iunia, a former house slave turned poet, now publishing under the name Mistress of Echoes. Her manumission record includes the note, inclined to metaphors. Keep an eye. And there's Autilius, who used to clean latrines and now owns 3. You underline that one out of professional respect. You spend the morning flipping scrolls, cross-referencing wax, and occasionally pausing to marvel at the notations. Tried to re-enslave himself to avoid taxes. Now insists on being called Marcus the Slightly Free. Believes his manumission was an administrative accident. Around midday, you're sent to deliver a message to a nearby freedman's shop, a bakery specializing in grain-free bread. You arrive to find the owner, Marrow, wearing a tunic made entirely of stitched-together tax notices. Protection, he says, paper beats curses. You hand him the message. He nods, offers you a bread sample questionable texture, and shares gossip. Apparently, a former senator is now secretly baking under a fake name. His crusts are mediocre, but his flour blend is virtuous. Back at the office, your next duty is to assist in a review interview. A man named Titus arrives, freshly freed. He wears a borrowed toga and carries 3 letters of reference, one from a priest, one from a fishmonger, and one from a goat. Not a literal goat, he clarifies. It's a merchant named Capris. During the interview, he insists on changing his occupation to civic consultant. What exactly does that entail? The record keeper asks. Advising people not to do foolish things, Titus replies. He's approved. Later, as you're helping re-roll scrolls and update name tablets, the record keeper points to a name in faded ink. See that one, he says. Marcia C., freedwoman, former mosaic tile sorter. You nod. She now manages 5 bathhouses and has a statue in Subura. Small, but it glows in the dark. You stare. We don't know how, he adds. It might be the paint. Just before dusk, you're asked to run a final errand. Deliver a newly stamped certificate of manumission to a freedman named Ulpius, who now works as a storyteller near the Forum. You find him surrounded by children and elders alike, spinning tales of heroes, lost cities, and a sponge who once saved a Roman senator from shame. You recognize the tale. You're pretty sure it's about you. He sees you, winks, and accepts the scroll. Thanks, friend, he says. You're in Chapter 3. You return to the office with a smile. The record keeper nods as you hand him your slate. Not all days are about drains and doors, he says. Some days are about remembering the people who cleaned them first. You walk home slowly, thinking about Titus, about Marcia, and about that sponge story making the rounds. Hilaris is waiting with dinner, barley stew, and half a pomegranate. Big day, he asks. Bigger for them, you reply, sitting down. And for once, your evening thoughts are light. Rome continues to move forward. So do its people. So do you. It's just after dawn when your new assignment arrives, not by runner, not by scroll, but via a small girl holding a basket of temple offerings. The priest sent me, she says. They said you're good with odd things. You glance at the wax tablet she hands you. Temple of Saturn, object audit and recovery, items left behind during festival. Ah, post-festival cleanup. You gather your tools, rag, wax slate, chalk, a small sack for unidentified sacred objects, and a practiced expression of detached curiosity. The Temple of Saturn is quiet now. The festivities long over, but the evidence remains. Incense ash dusts the stairs, grape stems trail from the steps, and something that smells like old cheese lingers in the air like a civic warning. You begin in the portico. Your first find, a sandal. Nothing surprising except this one is carved entirely from wood. Inside it, stuffed for padding, is a scrap of poetry. O Saturn, take my foot and make it wise. You pause, philosophical, possibly sarcastic. You note it as wooden sandal with attached aspirations. Next, a love poem scrawled in red wax directly onto a stone offering bowl. To M from S, I watched you light the lamp. My heart burned also. You wipe the bowl clean, but transcribe the note for the temple archive. The priests like to keep a record of emotional debris. You enter the inner colonnade and find 2 burnt figs arranged into a heart shape, surrounded by olive pits. Romantic gesture, says a passing acolyte. Or a squirrel, you suggest. He shrugs, same thing really. Behind the altar, you find something truly curious, a carved wooden chicken painted gold. Tied around its neck is a thread bearing a single coin. The inscription reads, "A modest bribe, may taxes be gentle." You carry it with both respect and amusement. It goes into the humor or heresy basket. By midday, your findings include 3 sandal straps, 1 mini harp with a broken string, a bowl of barley labeled for Saturn's carb loading, a child's drawing of a senator as a turnip. You log everything, even the turnip. While working near the side chapel, you're joined by a junior priest named Dama. He carries a checklist and the deep fatigue of someone who has seen too many festive grapes. We lost one of the lamps, he says, the small bronze one. Any chance you've seen it? You hadn't. But you remember something. In the lost property basket back at the servant hall, there was a bronze object, strangely shaped, polished, anonymous. You describe it. He perks up. That's the one. You send a runner to retrieve it. While waiting, Dama asks, ever found anything really strange? You consider. Someone once left a sponge at the Temple of Mercury with a poem. What kind of poem? You recite from memory, if thoughts grow heavy, scrub them clean. Dama nods. That's better than our entire hymn collection. When the lamp arrives, he inspects it, satisfied, then offers you something unexpected, a honey cake, fresh from the festival kitchen. For the work, he says, and for respecting the weirdness. You sit on the temple steps, nibble the cake, and watch as the forum stirs itself awake again. A woman leads a piglet past the temple of Castor. A street poet is already rehearsing near the rostra. Someone sneezes, twice. Just as you're about to leave, a last object catches your eye. Tucked into a crack near the temple's base is a tiny wooden carving, a face smiling, not Roman, not familiar. You show it to Dama. He frowns, foreign, Eastern style, possibly Nabatean, possibly a child's toy. He shrugs. You wrap it in linen and label it unknown origin, possibly sacred, definitely interesting. Back at the Officium Censoris, you log your day's findings. Scribonius glances at the list. Wooden chicken again? He asks. Different one, you reply. This one's ambitious. He grunts, makes a notation, and waves you off. Back at the quarters, Hilaris is polishing a tile. Someone scratched a map into this, he says. Of what? He shrugs. A chicken's journey, maybe. You laugh, lie back on your mat, and think about the strange things people leave behind when they're feeling hopeful, hungry, or just slightly tipsy under the stars. And somehow, you get to collect them. Not a bad life, all things considered. You rise slowly, the air thick with early morning stillness and the faint smell of lamp oil and laundry steam. Your joints complain quietly, like senators discussing a tax hike. Today's slate, scrawled in rushed script, reads, Assist Festival Setup, Temple of Flora, mosaic duty. You blink. Mosaic duty? Something about figs, Hilaris mutters from his bedroll, clutching a half-eaten pear. They're arranging them into pictures. Don't ask. You arrive at the Temple of Flora, the goddess of flowers and blooming things, to find a flurry of activity. Garlands are being hung, petals strewn, and tables loaded with spring offerings. The priests greet you with varying degrees of panic. "Ah, the helper," says one, pressing a bundle of linens into your arms. "You're on the fig grid." You are led to a shallow stone courtyard where several slaves and temple volunteers are crouched around a large outlined design on the ground, a giant mosaic pattern formed not from tile but fruit. Specifically, figs, hundreds of figs. Some are green, others deep purple. Some dried and flattened, others suspiciously juicy. Your job is to help fill in the sky section, using purple figs for shadow and halved green ones for stars. You stare for a long moment. Then you begin. It's fiddly work, oddly meditative. Figs squished just enough to stick. The design is meant to resemble a stylized goddess figure holding a bouquet. Your section is the night sky behind her head. As you work, a boy in priest robes tells you the backstory of the festival. They say Flora was once bribed with plums and figs to delay spring rains. Did it work, you ask? He shrugs. Depends on who you ask. The goat herders still grumble. Around midday, disaster nearly strikes. Someone, possibly a musician, possibly a child, steps on the edge of the mosaic. 3 rows of fig stars are flattened into a gooey smear. There is a collective gasp. One priest faints against a column. You, thinking quickly, rearrange the ruined area into a spiral pattern, mutter something about symbolic meteor showers, and nod solemnly. They accept it. You're handed a honey-sweetened wine and patted on the back. Once the fig mosaic is finished, you're reassigned to seating detail. The amphitheater near the temple will host the festival's blossom orations, and every bench must be checked for birds, crumbs, and personal curses. You find one discarded sandal with daisies tucked into the straps, a series of floral doodles carved into the stone, one labeled Petal Republic, a fig, alone, uncut, reverently placed. You log it as lone fig, probable offering, left in dignity. After the benches, you're handed a small hammer and asked to fix a broken post near the flower display. While hammering, a passing senator's wife stops, frowns, and says, "That post leans in a politically troubling direction." You pause, realign it slightly to the left. She nods and walks on. Late in the day, a strange request reaches you. Assist the festival complaints clerk. Yes, that is a real title. You sit beside a man named Rufinus, who wears flowers behind his ears and scribbles quickly on wax tablets. Most common complaint, you ask. Petals and sandals, he replies. Second is bees. You help transcribe. Too many dandelions, near sacred urn. Offended by the use of violet figs for Flora's eyes. Child claimed my garland, denies everything. Then one scroll arrives that's different. No complaint, just a poem. To the fig that stared from her gaze. I thanked you softly through floral haze. Rufinus blinks. You get one of those every year. At sunset, the orations begin. You find a seat near the back. A young man recites an ode to compost. A child performs a dance about bees. A woman sings about losing her sandal to love. You rest your head against a pillar. The mosaic glows in the torchlight, a field of fruit stars against stone. Someone hands you a petal-wrapped snack. You don't ask what's in it. Back in your quarters, you find a small bundle wrapped in linen on your mat. Inside, one perfect fig carved with a smiling face. You lie down, smile back, and let the sweetness settle. You wake to birdsong and the smell of crushed petals, leftovers from yesterday's festival, still drifting through the Subura like dreams that forgot to fade. There's no assignment slate today, not yet. Which means you rise slowly, your tunic still faintly stained with fig juice, and step outside into the softened hum of a city waking up just a little slower than usual. Rome, for once, is quiet. The temple bells haven't started. The fishmongers are silent. Even Hilarious, curled in his corner like a sleeping scroll, hasn't muttered about his knees or civic betrayal. You take your time with the morning basin, letting the water trickle down your arms. It's cold, but not sharp, a kind cold, refreshing, reminding. No sudden errands arrive, no shouts, no runners, it's strange. So you walk, not for duty, just because your legs remember the pattern. You pass the forum before the crowds arrive. The statues seem to exhale in the quiet. The marble steps still hold the warmth from yesterday's feet. You pass the Temple of Concord, where a lone priestess sweeps flower petals into little spirals. She nods at you. You nod back. You pause at the statue of Mars. The sock is gone finally. Someone's replaced it with a ribbon, red, neatly tied. You smile. And then, because muscle memory is stronger than even a day off, you find yourself at the lost property basket. It's fuller than usual. Among the contents, a sandal with a tiny bell tied to it, a carved olive pit in the shape of a sheep, a wax tablet etched with tiny perfect waves. And at the very top, your sponge, number 23, returned, again. You take it, hold it for a long moment. No note this time, just a smear of lavender oil on the handle. You place it carefully on the shelf above the others, not lost, not assigned, just there. By midday, a message does arrive. Not urgent, not official, just a small parchment left at your sleeping mat. It reads, "Thank you, for the statues, for the fig stars, for cleaning where we forget to look. May your sandals always return." No name, just a symbol, a tiny scratched spiral, the same one carved into the fig mosaic yesterday. You read it once more, fold it carefully, and tuck it into your satchel. As the sun sets over Rome, casting the city in that golden, almost soft light that makes the marble glow and the clay tiles look like embers, you walk home slowly, past the Temple of Ceres, past the pigeon wall, past the last fig of the season resting on a bench. In the quarters, Hilarious looks up from a scroll. "Quiet day?" he asks. You nod. "Earn it," he grins. You lie down, stretch, listen to the sounds of a city still turning, still breathing, still laughing softly in the corners where no one looks. And you sleep. So now, as you rest beneath Rome's endless sky, let the noise fade. The torches have burned low. The city too has exhaled. Statues gleam silently in the moonlight. Fig petals drift on the night air, and even the pigeons have tucked their heads beneath their wings. You, the humble keeper of scrolls and sponges, have done enough. More than enough. You have walked where few notice, polished what others overlook, folded dignity into creased tunics, and swept silence into crowded corners. Let that weight melt from your shoulders. Let the ache in your knees drift away with the scent of lavender. There are no runners tonight, no missed scrolls, no misplaced sandals, just the quiet hum of a world that somehow kept spinning because you remembered to relight the lamps. Breathe deeply. The sky above you is vast and indifferent, but the stone beneath you remembers. It remembers the sponge that vanished and returned, the fig that smiled, the ribbon around Mars' arm. You are not forgotten, not invisible. You are simply quiet now. Close your eyes. Let the marble soften. Let the mosaics fade to gentle blurs. Somewhere a priest is dreaming of taxes. Somewhere a pigeon dreams of breadcrumbs. And you, sleeping calm at peace, dream of figs and fountains, sandals and stars. Good night, Rome's quiet keeper. Good night,